Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, going solo today to break down the Knicks 126-120 win over the Atlanta Hawks on Friday night. Knicks, Jalen Brunson, a career-high 8 threes, and yet he still thinks he can do better. RJ Barrett continues his breakout. Julius Randle is turning into a distributor, a really good one, and more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/LockedOnNBA. You can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app. We are here for you guys 5, sometimes 6 days a week right now, like this week. This is our 6th episode this week, so make sure you never miss an episode. And if you want to take things one step further and be talking to us all the time, you can do so right through the text messaging app on your phone if you sign up for Subtext, the new thing we're offering. So check that out in the episode description. We'll give you all the latest news, updates, thoughts on games, etc., anytime you want. So that's pretty cool. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at strick.land. And the Knicks won 126-120 over the Atlanta Hawks on Friday night. Knicks. And let's honestly, I always say this, you don't ever remember the bad stuff in a win later on. Like if we look back 2 months from now, later in the season, we're not going to be thinking, the Knicks had a little bit of rough execution down the stretch, because they did. There was a little bit of, I guess, communication error from the Knicks, as far as, inbounds and getting the ball up the floor late in this game. And, it's not the best, but ultimately they win. And I thought they looked phenomenal throughout basically the entire game, all the way up to that point. And it was sort of punctuated by a pretty encouraging thing: Julius Randle knocking down free throws to seal this game up, which after the other night was a very welcome sight. So I'm not too worried about the fact that, that this is the only time I'm going to address that the Knicks had a less than stellar end to the game, but the rest was so good. Jalen Brunson hits a career 8 3-pointers in this game. I thought he just looked extremely comfortable in all types of his 3-point shots, was hitting spot ups like crazy, with a lot of assists coming from Julius Randle, which I'll get to in a sec. He was doing quick little pull-ups like in transition, or just bringing the ball down the floor to start a possession. Just if he was feeling it, walk right into it and just take a three. And he was looking super comfortable on those, and his patented step backs that he was so good at last year. I mean, he just, from the 3-point line exclusively, he looked amazing in this game. Ends with 31 points, 5 assists, 11 of 21 shooting overall, but 8 of 12 from 3. That's a tidy little 75%. You'll take that every single day of the week, shooting threes. I still think he's a little uncomfortable inside the arc, which he addressed himself in the post game. He's just one of those guys that, as always, is never going to say that he did, unquestionably a good job in a game. And so he was like, yeah, I was feeling it from 3, but I'm really not feeling comfortable from 2 yet. I need to get better. I need to do better with that and sort of find myself from 2-point range again. And I agree. It does just seem like he's a smidge off inside the arc. Like it's like a game of millimeters sometimes, and it feels like he's kind of just right there where the floater just isn't quite going in. The little, layups off glass aren't quite there yet. The midi isn't quite there yet, but the 3-pointer is certainly there after this game. And I hope that this was the beginning of something there. And what's great is that, I mean, he could still have an amazing game, even when he's not doing great work in probably his most effective area. I mean, as awesome of a 3-point shooter as he is, Jalen Brunson's office is in the middle of the floor, like, getting all of his juke moves in, getting layups, drawing fouls, hitting that floater, pulling up for those little mid-range shots. I mean, that's sort of like the the area that, you could tell that he puts the most work into with the footwork and everything else. And so the fact that that's not even kicking in yet and he's still playing as well as he is, it really tells you something. But he did have a couple really nice floaters down the stretch. So maybe he's finding his mojo there. And I'm gonna make a couple kind of bold predictions in this episode. I know we already did our bold prediction show with Knicks Film School last week, but a couple little bold predictions. What first one is, I think Jalen Brunson's gonna have a 40+ point game in the next week, because once the floater and all that clicks, if he keeps shooting as well as he is from three, he's just gonna erupt and he's gonna have probably one of his best scoring games of his career, I think, at some point in the next 2 weeks, because I thought he looked really tuned in preseason too, for the most part, other than maybe that last game, the sort of like dress rehearsal one. But the early games of the preseason, he looked really tuned in. And I was thinking to myself too, like, this guy's going to set a career high for points in a game at some point this season. I think it might come in like the next week once everything kind of clicks on for him. And speaking of guys that looked amazing and that everything is clicking for, RJ Barrett had an amazing game as well. 26 points, 6 assists, 9 of 15 shooting, 3 of 5 from deep, 5 of 6 from the line. You literally cannot find a bad number on this dude's stat sheet. Even turnover wise, he was still a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, which is what you always want to see. He had 3 turnovers to 6 assists. I honestly thought his scoring was fantastic, which you could tell from the box score, but I think we got to talk about the passing first. I mean, he's just seeing the floor so well right now. He had a fantastic feed to a cutting Dante DiVincenzo somewhat early on in this game, where DiVincenzo just made a nice cut and RJ just laced it right in there to him, and he got a nice easy layup there. He had a tough pass to or a touch pass, sorry, to quickly in a 3-on-1 with Josh Hart in transition. Hart got out going first, then gets it to RJ. And I thought this showed some growth from RJ. In the past, we've sort of seen him look off guys in transition like this to try to go up and get the layup himself, maybe draw a foul. Instead, he was just like, nope, easy option. Just going to kick it to IQ, who gets an easy layup there. That was awesome. And then he had a really nice, like, I called this a quarterback to wide receiver type pass to Mitch up high. It was almost like when a quarterback throws to this won't be my only football analogy, by the way, but it's almost like when a quarterback throws to a wide receiver up high in the end zone on sort of like a fade route and just expects the wide, or knows the wide receiver can go up there and get it. Sort of similar. Had a really nice pass to Mitch that way, where he threw it in a place that only Mitch could get it, nice and high, and Mitch was able to just turn around nice and easy for a dunk at one point. And then had a really nice heads up whip around pass to Julius. It was actually after RJ had tried to drive in and got blocked, recovered his own miss there, or the block shot, and instead of going right back up for it and trying the same thing a second time, got his head up, looked around, found Julius Randle in the corner, whipped it around a couple defenders, had like take a real nice like sort of arc of his arm there to get that pass in there, and it just looked fantastic. I mean, I think the whole team is playing like this, but it really shows through the most in RJ, where they are really tuned into each other right now. Like, they are always all looking for the extra pass. They're all trying to just find the open man on any given possession. And I feel like the team really just kind of knows where everybody is right now. They're the second that they get the ball, they're like, okay, I know that so-and-so is going to be in the corner. I know that, so-and-so is going to be making a cut right now. But if nothing else, they have these actions designed where they just understand each other's movements and are able to find each other in those situations. And I think it's just been fantastic. But RJ also looked explosive, smooth, confident on offense as far as scoring the ball. I mean, I think he's just got it all going right now. I like first bucket of the game, just a disgusting hezzy in transition to freeze Trae Young, which, Trae Young's not the toughest defender, so maybe not the highest bar to clear as far as defenders to freeze at any given point, but still impressive nonetheless. I mean, he got the ball, starts in, just takes this brief little stop that just completely froze Trae in his tracks, and then just cuts right to the hoop, gets an awesome thunder dunk early in the game to really kind of set the pace a little bit. Found his mid-range game in this one, which I think sort of eluded him in that first game and in the preseason a bit, where you could see he's trying to work that mid-range game, that pull-up midi into his arsenal a bit. He found it in this game, certainly. I mean, he looked really comfortable shooting it. Even had one where he shot it and didn't have a ton of space over the outstretched arm of DeAndre Hunter, but just did it anyway and made it look real good with just like a little slight fadeaway to it. I thought that was one of his best shots of the game. He also had another one of those go-go gadget arm kind of stretched out finishes on a layup around the hoop, and that was fantastic. And the three is just really smooth right now. I mean, I love his follow through. You could just see the confidence in his shot right now. Like, I feel like in past years, he would let go, and then you could even see in his body language sometimes where it almost looked like he was getting ready to just kind of head back on defense. Like, I don't know for sure if that one's going in. This one, he's holding it out there. He's doing the swan. Like you learn in middle school. To hold out your follow through on your shot. And he's doing that every single time. And just it's you could just tell through body language and through his form and everything else that he thinks that every single one of these is going in right now. And that's great to see because, I mean, I don't know. This feels like the leap right now, especially on offense. Like it's rare that we see RJ start the season this hot. His entire career has kind of been marred by slow starts and not necessarily hitting the ground running. And I feel like this is a big step for him that he's, coming out so on fire right now. And not just on offense either. I mean, I talked about the passing and the scoring, but defense has just been top notch for him too. I added the stat in that was pulled by Knicks Muse on Twitter. Through 2 games, players being guarded by RJ Barrett have shot 9 of 27 on field goals, which is 33%. And then if you just zero in on Jason Tatum and Trae Young, they're a combined 1 of 8 being guarded by RJ this season. So for those that still remember this Nick of old, that's like Frank Ntilikina numbers, like that used to be the sort of stuff that we would highlight with him, except for RJ's playing amazing on offense right now. So if he can keep that up, I mean, that guy is gonna have himself a season because I think he's cooking in a way that we have not previously seen him start a season, certainly in the past. So I look forward to seeing whatever's coming next for him. But Julius Randle is also having a heck of a start to the season. Not really shooting the ball so much, but distributing. I mean, this guy is looking like a point forward right now. And I want to talk about him in a second. But first, I got to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by Dave. And at one point or another, we all need a little financial help. And that's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. And when you download Dave, you can get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. Extra cash gives you more money to buy groceries for your tank, finally get your car repaired, or catch up on bills without having to wait for your next paycheck. You can even build credit when you settle up on time. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easier. So if you're in a pinch, get the help you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That's dave.com/lockedonnba. You could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. And I wanted to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by Jase Medical as well. And the Jase case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Jase Medical now offers customizability for your Jase case with dozens of add-on medications. So choose the medications that fit you and your family's unique needs. Jase is continually working to expand their medication offerings. And that means that if you have medication that you know that you need, you can get it and have it on hand just in case. You know what I mean? Like, we're not immune, unfortunately, to things like hurricanes in this area or huge storms and large scale power outages from time to time. And that could mean that your pharmacy might not be able to fill your prescription in a pinch. And then you can have it right there and ready to go in case anything should happen that you need it and you're out. So it's a pretty great situation with Jase. And if you have a family member that you think this could work for, you could buy a gift card for family or your loved ones so that they can get a Jase case of your own. of their own, I mean to say. So go to jasemedical.com and enter code locked on at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code locked on at jasemedical.com. All right. And I'm back in talking about this Knicks victory. And man, I really had a ton to love out of this game. I mean, like I said, the late game execution maybe needed a small amount of work, but otherwise, I thought the Knicks just did such a good job of playing exactly what the Hawks wanted to do. And nobody embodied that more than Julius Randle. I think he's just playing insanely smart right now, especially in this game. I mean, he knew exactly what the Hawks wanted to do and he took advantage of it. So like if you look at his stats without seeing the game, you might be like, well, okay, yeah, like the assist numbers were great, the rebound numbers were great, but he only shot 4 of 10. Like first off, only 10 shot attempts. What's that about? 3 of 7 from three is good though, and 6 of 8 from the free throw line. I mean, you'll kind of take that all day at this point if he shoots 75% from the free throw line. But that those numbers aren't that bad in a nutshell, but combined with the first game, you might be thinking like, oh, what's going on with Julius Randle? Like he's not really shooting that well. Does this mean that he's having, a down season, a down first 2 games, But I thought he was just brilliant in this game, regardless of the shooting. One thing that I'll say is like you can tell the Hawks still approach Julius Randle like this is 2020 to 2021 playoffs. Like they definitely still think that he is just this bumbling dude that's gonna like get the ball and want to hold on to it, want to take the shot, and that they're gonna be able to strip the ball away from him. Like that was obviously what was on their mind this entire game. They were trying to get inside, trying to every time Julius Randle got the ball around the high post or even closer to the 3-point line, they were sending help. They were sending the closest near, available defender to come and try to swipe the ball away. Sometimes it was Trae Young, sometimes it was others, but like we saw that worked like crazy in the 20 to 21 playoffs. And yet now it does not. I mean, Julius was so good. He was passing out of all those situations. He was spraying it to open shooters. I mean, he hit Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett, felt like for almost every single one of their spot up opportunities. And just was being a maestro from that high post. I feel like this is exactly what you want to see out of Julius. Like nothing feels forced with him right now. His final stat line ended up being, I mean, for as much as I just said about didn't have his best shooting game in the world, but he had 17 points, 12 boards, a team high 9 assists. And I really feel like on offense right now, he's playing almost like it's like a more offensively capable Draymond Green right now. Like, for all the good that Draymond Green has done for the Warriors for years, one of the main things has been like, well, he just can't shoot the three consistently, and he's very limited in what he can do on offense a lot of the time. But he's a really good passer, and he's good at kind of bringing the ball down and initiating and all that stuff. Julius is like playing like that, except for he also has a bag. Like he also can dribble. He also can get a step back himself. He also can get all the way to the hoop when he wants to. But just like the looks he was having on offense in this game, passing the ball were just masterclass level stuff. I mean, he even was kind of keeping his eyes up in transition and making almost like Kevin Love-esque transition passes to get things going that way. He found RJ for both of his big transition dunks. The first one was the one I mentioned earlier where he had that hezzy on Trae Young. But then the second one, Julius caught the ball like probably around the restricted area, roughly in the paint on a rebound, and just immediately head up, looks down the floor, and sees RJ just streaking down, nails him with an absolute dime all the way down, and RJ gets another dunk out of that. I just thought it was such a good game for Julius. Regardless of if he's not looking to score as much, that might actually be the optimal form for him. Like, here's my second bold prediction for this. My second huge overreaction after 2 games. I mean, Julius will probably drop like 45 in the next game and prove me completely wrong on this, but I think this might be one of Julius's lowest scoring seasons of his prime. Let's put it that way. I won't say of his career because obviously, your first few years in the league, you don't really count those towards things, especially with Julius, where he's had very much a ramp up in his career. But I wouldn't be surprised if Julius averages like 17, 12, and like 8.5 assists this year. And like by far sets his high water assist mark and consistently is looking at potential triple doubles because this looks like such a comfortable role for him. He seems like I've talked in the past about how he had those games where he would be sort of passive aggressively passing to people, where it seemed almost like he was being like, fine, you don't want me to shoot the ball. Well, I'm just going to pass it. Like there was the one classic game in uh, the the horrible 21-22 season where he kind of like did that, where it was like he went out there and he only shot threes or just passed the ball every single time. And you could tell that it wasn't because he wanted to. It was just like, seemed like he was making a statement for that particular game. Whereas right now, it just seems like he's like, I know that I have tons of shooters surrounding me now, and this is awesome. And I'll draw this attention and I'll just take the assist, man. Like, let's get these points, let's get this win. And I think that's just part of the continuity of this team. I'll talk about the continuity again in a second, but I think that that's really working out. So I think that Julius might have a down scoring year this year, down being a relative term. Like I think he'll still shoot pretty good percentages, but just will be taking less shots. But I think that we're going to look at this potentially one of his best seasons as a Knick, or maybe his best season as a Knick, pending, what the future holds in the next few years or whatever. But I think that if he doesn't score as much, but he's diming up like this is going to be a really awesome year for him. I thought Dante DiVincenzo also showed why he was the Knicks' biggest target this offseason. He shot 3 of 5 from deep. And when I say deep, I mean like 2 of them were real deep. Like he was a few steps behind the 3-point line and was still just pulling. And this is why you bring this guy in. Like he obviously didn't hit a 3 in his first game, but this is the shooting that the Knicks needed out of him. This is the stuff that you couldn't count on, not to like make it about Obi Toppin, but this is the stuff that you couldn't count on when he was that guy in that spot on, the team out there. You couldn't count on those threes to go down with DiVincenzo. Like this guy is going to make a lot of threes this year and is going to have a real impact off the bench that way. And he's also just such a menace cutting to the hoop. Like one of my favorite things that came out again in this game that I'm starting to see with him is this sort of scenario where he brings the ball down and initiates the offense, but then gets rid of it real quick. Like kind of he's almost just like the token guy bringing the ball down the floor just to get it across the timeline. But then immediately he kicks it to someone, gets the offense running. And in this case, he kicked it to Josh Hart. And then with how good of a passer Josh Hart is too, DiVincenzo just the second the ball with that was out of his hands, immediately started looking to cut to the hoop. And then Hart found DiVincenzo on this nice cut to the hoop, and he just went right up for a quick layup. That's becoming one of my favorites. It's almost like to make another football reference. It's almost like when, a team throws a really good wildcat formation out there and, you're like, well, they're going to run, they're going to run the ball. That's period. That's what's going to happen. And yet your scheme is just so good that it works. And I feel like that's sort of what we're seeing with DiVincenzo here, where if he brings the ball down the floor, you don't figure he's probably going to be running a pick and roll. You don't figure he's going to be self-creating necessarily. Maybe he will from time to time, but you kind of just know he's going to get rid of it fast. He's probably going to look to cut, and yet he's just such a good cutter. And this team is filled with so many good passers that I think they're going to be able to exploit a lot of teams that way if they sleep on him for even half a second. So that was awesome. He was also all over the place on defense again. Got himself a really nice steal in a passing lane and had a really nice help block on DeJounte Murray that I really liked. I mean, Murray is a really long dude and pretty hard to defend around the rim sometimes. And DiVincenzo just kind of came out of nowhere and just through pure timing got a really nice block on him. So it's paying dividends. This DiVincenzo signing already. I think that he's really going to have a fantastic year for the Knicks this year, and things are looking really good right now. But I want to talk about another guy who I think is having a phenomenal first couple games this season, which is Mitchell Robinson. 4 blocks, 4 steals in this game. One of his, I would say, best defensive performances maybe of his career. It was an absolute masterclass. He was a one-man wrecking crew as far as busting up pick and roll defense and everything else. So I'm going to talk about that in just a sec. But first, I got to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. And what is PrizePicks? Well, I'll tell you what, it's my favorite fantasy game out there right now, because if you've played any other daily fantasy games, you might have had to deal with the fact that you enter these contests with a bunch of other people where you have to put in like $20 just to buy an entry. And then you get in there and you think you've made some great decisions. And then you look at the leaderboard when the contest goes on at the end of football Sunday or whatever, and you realize, Oh, man. There's like 500 entries from one person at the top of this contest that this guy just bought a ton of spots and had a winning lineup predicted by some like spreadsheet algorithm, whatever, that told him that these guys were the best value ads. And then he just made a ton of money. And I basically just flushed 20 bucks down the toilet. That is not the case with Prize Picks. They're my favorite daily fantasy because you're not playing against other people. It's just you versus projected numbers. So, for example, you might pick Jalen Brunson over 20.5 points, Dante DiVincenzo over 2.5 made threes, and Julius Randle over 6.5 assists in any given game. And those all stack and allow you to potentially win up to 25 times your money. You just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. And with the Prize Picks reboot policy, this is my favorite thing. Your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance, which is awesome. If you've ever played fantasy, injuries are just the worst possible thing. So definitely one of the best selling points of Prize Picks. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, and I'm back in to finish talking about this Knicks win. Again, that's 126-120 over the Atlanta Hawks. First win of the Knicks season. Always good to get that first one on the board. And this one inspired so much confidence. And Mitchell Robinson was a huge part of that. 4 blocks and 4 steals in this game, and just a huge amount of activity for him. I mean, this was, like I said, I know that this is really saying something, but I thought this was one of the most impressive defensive games of his career. I walked away from this one just stunned from how good he looked. He had some of those blocks where he was just like so in control of things now, where it works in stark contrast to kind of how he was early in his career and shows the kind of growth he's made. Which, by the way, there was a great quote from Scott Perry earlier this week on a podcast that he did, where he was talking about how the Knicks really, when Perry was part of the front office that drafted Mitch and then was still part of the Leon Rose regime and everything, talking about how proud he is of Mitch and like how much he's grown as a man and as a player and everything else, and that they drafted a kid who didn't necessarily have the best home situation, didn't necessarily have the best like upbringing or whatever, and hadn't had the best basketball environment and everything else, and the fact that they've helped him turn into the player that he is today. Very cool quote from Scott Perry, and just cool for Mitch. But to get back to the basketball of this game, like the control that Mitch showed on some of these blocks was awesome. I mean, he's using the backboard like a weapon now. Like he's actively looking to block things off the backboard so that he can get them right back in his hands and start a fast break. But also just is not he's not looking to send things into the third row anymore, which I know is something that a lot of players love to do. They love to just kind of have that power block where you just get up there, show your athleticism, get up there, get your hand on the ball, and just smack it as hard as you can, like a volleyball spike, just to kind of make that statement of like, no, you're not doing this in my house today. But Mitch now, he's almost blocking them like extra soft. Like he's trying to control the ball out of blocks. And it's very like, if you ever play NBA 2K, they sometimes let you do that, where if you time your block perfectly, you just kind of snatch it right out of the air, and the announcer freaks out and is like, "Oh my God, he snatched it right out of the air." And Mitch is kind of just doing that on a daily basis now, not necessarily getting his whole hand on the ball and snatching it in like that, but controlling it to the point where his team can benefit from it rather than just kind of saying, okay, we'll reset, but now the other team's going to get another opportunity to go at us again. So we stopped them this time, but we're not really making anything of it, which is the problem with sort of the more uh, demonstrative blocks out there. So I love that. And he had a couple blocks where he really controlled them like that in this game, but he also just played some of the nastiest pick and roll busting defense you could ever hope to see. Those 4 steals almost were like blocks, most of them, because it wasn't just him. Like Hartenstein kind of does it more, where I feel like he has the more active hands in the lane with getting his hand in there and poking a ball loose kind of thing. Mitch's steals mostly came because the Hawks kept trying to run like Clint Capella, or at one point, I think it was a backdoor cut by DeAndre Hunter that they were trying to hit for an alley-oop. They were trying to, play traditional pick and roll offense, and Mitch just destroyed that single-handedly. It was really, really impressive. Like, just getting up there and showing that he is basically at his peak physical form right now, because Trae Young would throw a high arcing pass that would be something like what you would see Mitch get thrown usually, trying to find Capella or whoever. And Mitch would just get up there and somehow get fingertips on it. And this pass that's trying to go completely over his head and, to the waiting arms of the guy behind him, just completely taking advantage of the fact that the other team thought that they could get that by him and blowing it up every single time. I mean, he had them really afraid after a while because he just kept blowing things up so much. And also, if you want to look at huge growth for Mitch, this game was another one that just showed a huge amount of growth from it. Isaiah Hartenstein got into foul trouble, had 4 fouls in like a little under 11 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, which meant that Mitch had to play 38 minutes in this game. And through 38 minutes, the guy only had 1 foul. I mean, that's bonkers. That is so good. Like, I think we're really seeing in the early stages of this season a huge, huge leap for Mitchell Robinson in terms of just finding the perfect version of himself. And I'm very excited to see where it goes because he's playing really fantastic ball right now so far. But some other quick odds and ends before I sign off. Welcome back to Clyde Frazier on the broadcast in this. I missed him so much. I'm so glad that he's back on Knicks broadcast. So that was great having him with Mike Breen calling this one. True midseason form for both the Knicks and the broadcast team. Emmanuel quickly had a little bit of an off night shooting. He shot 1 of 9 from deep, but he still put together a nice 11, 6, and 6 stat line, 11 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. And nonetheless, I thought he was just an absolute positive out there. Still played great defense. Still was looking to distribute. He's going to have a really good year this year. And just like he proved in the playoffs last year, he can still be a huge positive, even if the 3-point shot isn't falling. I still have a little bit of light concerns about this team's ability to defend a team that plays two true bigs off the bench. And that was sort of underscored by Jalen Johnson in this game, which, by the way, Jalen Johnson looks really good. Like, as much as I hate to give the Hawks credit for anything, good job to them for drafting him and taking the time to develop him properly, because I think he's really turned into a player. He's starting to kind of make good on that promise that he didn't quite cash in on at Duke. And then, there's some question marks about him coming into that draft a couple years ago. He's starting to look really, really good, I think. So props to them for that. But he kind of ate a little bit against the Knicks second unit. And that's kind of one of my worries. Like, they were looking to exploit that size difference sometimes. And the Knicks are going to make up for that sometimes with the playing the passing lanes like they are, which the team has still just been amazing at doing that, which I have a good stat for that in just a sec. But, it still just is a smidge worrisome for me. But the Knicks are averaging 9 steals in each of their first 2 games, which puts them in the top half of the league. I think they're tied for like 12th right now or something in steals per game. Obviously it's a small sample size caveat, but I think there's just going to be possibly some issues against teams that have a bigger 4 off the bench. And I wonder if the Knicks will just use Jericho Sims in those rare instances sometimes, or if they'll just deal with it and just kind of do what they did in this game and say, you know what, maybe a bigger guy will get some buckets or some dunks on us from time to time in the second unit, but we'll make up for it in spades with the 3-point shooting and, the turnovers that we're causing. But just something to keep an eye on. It's something that I worried about prior to the season. And I hope it doesn't become an issue, but we'll see how it goes throughout the year. And, there's not going to be too many teams that have guys that are going to really challenge you off the bench that way anyway. As far as kind of like mobile, bigger bigs like that, like Jalen Johnson seems to kind of have a pretty unique physical profile. So I guess we'll see. But anyway, a really encouraging stat to end this show that I saw that I wanted to highlight, which kind of underscores everything I talked about with the offense. Your New York Knicks are top 7 in the NBA in assists per game through 2 games with 27 per game. They were buoyed by 30 in this game. And I got to say, I think this is why they say continuity matters. Like you want to have guys that know each other, that know where each other are going to be. And we're really seeing that play out with the Knicks so far this year. I think they're looking to shoot a ton of threes. They're looking to kick out to their shooters at all times. And everybody knows where everybody's going to be at any given time. And it's really showing through in the assist numbers. And I think that's only going to get better as this team warms up a little more. And as guys like, Randall and Brunson just continue to kind of find their role as far as roll ROLL, like go on a roll in on offense, because they obviously know that their role ROLE is to be the alphas on the team. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, and I think this team is just going to keep getting better on offense, and we might see even better offensive numbers than last year. So we'll see how that all goes in the end. But till next time, I think that's it for this game. Gavin and I will be back to recap the Pelicans game on Monday morning for you guys. So keep your ears out for that. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Peace out, everybody.